everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. I don't have a better name for it yet, but maybe someday. This is the stream in which I do something random, or something I've had in my library for a while, or something that I just found interesting that doesn't fall into the TED or TEDx category of things. So that is the Sunday stream until I come up with a better name. And I'm coming to you live from inside Silent Hill, because that's what it looks like outside my window right now due to the massive smoke from multiple forest fires. And I've been locked in my apartment for the last several days, as hermetically sealed as I can to prevent myself from inhaling a tree. But hey, that's 2020 for you. But hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a good Sunday. Wherever you are, whatever's going on, hope you're all safe and well. And who's joining me today real quick? Well, Scientrology, hello. Richo8181, St. Michael, Matt Barnes, Keeverdam, Raziel, That One Servant of Satania, Absolutely Degenerate, No Room for Squares, Quinn the Cultist, Zach the White Mage, Gunfox61, Data Wasteland, Mike Savage, and then chat jump, because of course it does. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, Spiro Girl, however I'm supposed to say it, I don't know. Pink Hall, the Driving Ape Man, Johnny Stoffel, Brutus, Zalbla, Black Belt for Christ, Hate Camel, D.P. Hamlin, Psionic Dreams, the gayest person on YouTube, Advocatus Diaboli. Hello, everyone. All right, so what's on the docket for today? Well, as many of you may know from watching my channel for some time, I have done many videos on diversity and inclusion, executives or officers or consultants. But rare is the time that I've ever actually seen a diversity consultant in action, like actually giving a presentation to a business. Usually it's just videos or promos of them talking about what they do, and rarely do I see them doing what they do. So our subject today is a lady that I've done a couple of videos on many moons ago, where she was just sort of talking to her camera kind of thing. But I came across this, oh God, I don't know, a couple months ago. I think it's been around for a bit, but I hadn't seen it before, and I still haven't seen it. But I kept it in reserve on the chance I wanted to do something with it, and so here we are. Her name is Ritu Basan. If I'm saying that correctly, I hope I am. She's a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, amongst many other things. And so this is a portion of a presentation she was giving to a business, as far as I understand. And it involves, as the title suggests, what is it now? Sorry. Because the title on my screen is covered up by the timer of the show. So, how power, privilege, and supremacy show up in the workplace. How power, privilege, and supremacy show up in the workplace. Well, if I'm going to do a sort of, I don't know, pre-game analysis of the title itself, how does power, privilege, and supremacy show up in the workplace? Well, my reflexive and possibly more reasonable answer would be every workplace has a hierarchy. You have a boss, you have managers, you have employees, and so on and so forth. So power exists because responsibilities are delegated. Privilege exists because the higher up you are on the chain, likely the more privileges you have within the company. And supremacy exists because, again, there's a hierarchy. If I was being, naive about what those terms mean these days, that's what I'd say, but obviously it probably means something else. But regardless, we're going to learn something today, I'm hoping, and I hope all of you do as well. So, per usual, I'm going to start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we'll proceed. This whole segment clocks in at 11:27. I didn't have to actually chop off anything at the beginning or the end because there's no music or anything I had to worry about as far as like copyright type stuff. So we're getting the full meal deal for this segment. And again, this is not the entire presentation. I think she posted a couple of videos that splits it up into segments, but I believe this is the longest of them, covering maybe the most interesting stuff. So with all that, let's proceed.
Supremacy is a really hard word or area to talk about in the workplace
because you can hardly get the words out without stumbling over them? I don't know, but you guys hear all that? Sounds good, says Dina B. John Smith gives me the thumbs up. Let's see. Brad Young, hello. Kay Shull, hello. Fernanda, hello. Peter Silak, 80s, 313, hello. And Jay Hess, hello. All right, so supremacy is a difficult subject to talk about and even express articulately. All right.
Because it is so vilified, it's so uncomfortable, especially in polite Canada.
Oh, we're in Canada? I didn't know we were in Canada. But let's see. Yeah, Ritu Basan, speaker, leadership, and inclusion consultant, president of Basan Consulting Incorporated, author, The Authenticity Principle. Yeah, I think that's the video I did on her way back when, where she was talking about authenticity and referring to it in such a way that it made me think of a religion, like a workplace religion. Authenticity was a belief system. I don't remember all the details, but I remember that much. It's somewhere back in my library. If I have the wherewithal to remember after this, I will try to add a link to that video at the end of this video. We'll see if I remember to do that. But anyway, I cut her off slightly, so I'm going to back up just a couple seconds.
Uncomfortable, especially in polite Canada. Really uncomfortable. When I say the word supremacy, what is the thought or word or image that pops into your head?
Well, I suppose these days I can't help but think of white supremacy. I mean, it's not willingly that I think of that necessarily, but that's unfortunately the immediate thing that I'm brought to associate it with.
Yes. KKK, what else?
Well, okay, yeah, as an extension of the ideology, I suppose.
Pardon me?
One way, my way.
One way, my way. What else?
The born supremacy.
I'm better than you? Yep. So a lot of us initially, when I say supremacy, it's we have hoods. A lot of us picture hoods, the KKK, actual people marching in rallies, Nazi symbols, etc. How many of you thought that when I said supremacy? Throw up your hands.
Well, yeah, again, as inundated as the phrase white supremacy or white supremacism, etc., I think it's unavoidable these days because that has been the zeitgeist of it. But yes, the word by itself doesn't necessarily mean something bad inherently. It is a relatively ambiguous notion. You can have a supremacy of skill in one thing or another, and it doesn't necessarily connotate that you are a bad person or arrogant or anything. But sure, okay, yes. I'm going on because I can only imagine where this is going.
Okay, when your brain goes to people in white hoods, what is that called?
Association.
It's called bias.
Oh. It is? Well, I guess technically.
That's bias.
Okay.
Okay, so we talk a lot about bias. This is a really good example of bias. What is bias? You'll know from your organizational training, bias are mental shortcuts our brains take in decision making.
Yes, I suppose so. I believe I'm acting like I would in an actual... If I was actually sitting there, I think this is how I'd be going like, okay, I can kind of agree with what you're saying. Of course, the rest of me is going, how am I being led into a boiling pan of water?
Like when I say lawyer, first image that pops into our head.
Dong dong! Well, I guess that wasn't an image. It was a sound. And it's not technically just about lawyers, but you know what I mean.
When I say parent,
trap.
First image that pops into our head.
Oh, image. Steve Martin in the movie Parenthood. That was the first thing that came to mind.
When I say CEO, first image that pops in your head.
CEO, Jeff Bezos.
I say supremacy, first image that pops in your head.
Bourne. Jason Bourne.
That's all bias. Mental shortcuts going to the first thing we've internalized about meaning, message attached to that word. The problem in our society is that when we think supremacy, most of us go to KKK, white hoods.
Okay, well, I will admit that is a problem. You know, it's kind of very limiting in your thought process and such. Okay, so you're going to try to like ease us away from that automatic notion, then? I guess. Okay.
Which is not wrong.
Wait. You said it was a problem, but now it's not wrong. Well, I mean, okay. I mean, it's not like there's a correct or incorrect answer to your like association, I suppose, until you start putting some kind of moral value on it, I guess. But you said it was a problem, but now it's not wrong. So either it's not wrong or it isn't a problem. Which is it? Because
the KKK are a manifestation of the ideology of supremacy, but
the ideology of white supremacy. All right, let's be specific. We're going to talk about specific terms. Let's talk in specific terms, okay? Supremacy is an ambiguous term. It doesn't mean anything until you associate it with something. Supremacy in what? Skill? Supremacy in art? Supremacy in what? Now, white supremacy says something much different than, I don't know, baseball supremacy. Okay.
The problem is, as long as we're thinking KKK, we're not going to be talking about this at work.
Wait, what? The concept of supremacy we're not going to be talking about at work because we associate it with the KKK. Okay, well, okay, what do you mean?
Right, because who's going to talk about the KKK at work? Like, no, thank you.
No, wait. Talking about the concept of supremacy does not mean you're talking about the KKK. If you're talking about the KKK, you're talking about the KKK. The concept of supremacy, I mean, do you have to use that word, I guess? I mean, what are we talking about? Where are we going with this?
It's like not appropriate, not like no. So we don't go there, and because language and concepts and frameworks matter, it leads to an action.
What?
So after today, I'm going to teach you the more accurate, fulsome definition of supremacy, so that you.
The more accurate, fulsome definition of supremacy. Is fulsome a dictionary? I always think of Merriam-Webster. Oh, that's my bias. Oh no, that's my bias talking. But okay, yeah, just the definition of supremacy, full stop. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't involve inherently the KKK. You have to add a qualifier there before you can get to somewhere in the neighborhood of the KKK. So you're going to teach a word. Okay.
You have it. Am I fussed about whether you take this back to your workplaces and start screaming supremacy in boardrooms? No, I don't think you need to do this. But what I do think is that you need to hold the concept.
Okay. I can have the concept of the word in my head absent any other qualifiers. What does this have to do with the workplace? Okay. You're really trying to distance yourself from people's assumptions of what you're talking about when you say supremacy. All right, fine. You've given your disclaimer. Where are we going with this? What do you mean? Because like I said before we started, when I think of a workplace and those words, power, privilege, supremacy, I just think of the hierarchy, the business structure, the delegation of authority. That's all I think of. And there's nothing inherently evil about that or anything offensive about that, unless you're some kind of like, I have to tear down the system sort of person. Thank you for calling Driving Ape Man. Folsom is a prison. Yeah, Folsom is a prison, but I don't know if Folsom is also the name of like a dictionary because she mentioned definitions. And, otherwise we're going to have some Folsom prison blues. I'm stuck in Folsom prison and time keeps dragging on. Okay.
To have the concept there with you.
Yes.
So, and I'm going to make it very simple for you. Supremacy is simply the ideology. It's an ideology.
Supremacism might be an ideology with the ism at the end. Supremacy by itself is not necessarily an ideology. It could be just a matter of fact, like if you put a bunch of tuna in a giant tank and you put two sharks in there, the sharks maintain supremacy over the food chain. That's not an ideology, that's just a fact of life. But okay, if you're putting it into the context of an ideology, then sure, supremacism can be an ideology with the ism at the end.
Okay, so it's a way of thinking, a philosophical underpinning that is rooted in how we think and live and feel and behave and lead, but also permeates our systems.
Supremacism, yes, supremacy does not necessarily mean that. It all depends on context. Give us some context. And when you said earlier that words matter, you're right, and you're using the wrong words.
Is the ideology
yes.
that one group of people are better than another group of people?
Not necessarily. Oh my gosh. Okay. Lancelot652, thank you so much. You could be talking about how your boss holds supremacy. That's what I would think at work. Exactly. Again, when I started out, I gave you my baseline of like, okay, if somebody said, I want to talk to you about workplace power, privilege, and supremacy, my first thought is simply the business hierarchy, the CEO, the vice presidents, the president, the senior managers, the accountants, the so on, on and on down. The big tree, the big pyramid of power that most organizations have, all right? And each level above the next has supremacy over the one below it. That doesn't mean it's an ideology. That just means it's a structural system. That's how hierarchies work. Power, privilege, supremacy. Every level you go up, those things increase, winnow down to fewer and fewer people. It's how we work as human beings and have done so forever. It does not inherently mean something bad. There's no moral context to it until you tell us what the people are doing or what the organization is producing or something, I guess. It's judging a hierarchy on the content of their output, not on the nature of their structure. Does that make sense? At least that makes sense to me. I don't know what she's saying. Not yet.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Supremacy is the ideology that one group of people are better than another group of people.
Or that one, I don't know, tier of people in a company possess more authority and responsibility than another. Doesn't necessarily mean they're better. It just means they have more responsibility. It's different. Okay, I know. I'm belaboring the point, but she's just irritating me with this. It's very simple, except it's not that simple. You're really changing the definition of words here.
And supremacy then shows up in a number of cultural identities.
Uh-huh.
So when I say to you,
yes,
let's look at gender supremacy in our society.
Women outnumber men. I mean, as far as numbers are concerned, globally, there are approximately 51% of women and 49% of men. So women, by numbers, are supreme over men. That's not a value judgment on them being better, but insofar as numbers are concerned, they possess supremacy. But then I'm using context and not just simplifying it.
Which group or which identity?
Which demographic, you mean?
Which group within gender has supremacy in Canadian culture? Who would you say that group is?
Demographic, not group, not identity, demographic. And in Canadian culture, well, let's see. Who is on the majority of the currency in Canada? Would that be a queen by any chance? So, I don't know. Culturally speaking, what gender hold supremacy in Canadian culture? I don't know. But also, in what context? Like, which gender demographic holds supremacy in hard labor jobs, or the medical industry, or you're eliminating context here, which doesn't help anything. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people in Scribbles. Hello, Kyle. All right. So tell us, in Canadian culture, which demographic holds supremacy?
Men.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Men. Right. Yeah, men. Nod, smile, nod, smile.
Men have gender supremacy over women.
How? In what fashion? In what way? What do you mean? You're saying things. You're not backing them up with anything.
And people from the trans community.
What? Huh? Huh?
When I say racial supremacy, which group of people have supremacy over others?
In what context? If you're just talking about numbers, well, I'm going to guess in Canada, Caucasians outnumber everybody else. Does that mean they... Wait. Okay. Okay, hold on. My brain's hurting here. So her definition of supremacy is inherently and only an ideology of betterness. And I know that's not really a word, but I'm shorthanding myself here. So supremacy in her world just means one group thinks they are better than another group. And then she goes into which demographic, I'll say the right word, has gender supremacy. Men. So you're saying that men, all men in Canada, think that they are better than women. Okay. And now we're going on to race. So I assume we're going to go into white people. So if white people outnumber everybody else, therefore white people believe they are better than everybody else. Is that it? Because that's the line of thinking you are leading us on. By giving us a definition for something and then applying it to, I can only assume, population statistics. Except that I'm not sure if there actually are more men than women in Canada, but I have no idea. Either way, you are assigning an ideology on the basis of statistics, as far as I can tell. But that's as far as I can tell because you haven't said much else. Thank you, Gear PG. I joined a bit late. I was joined a bit late, but this is just maddening assertions to my mind. My brain hurts. Yeah. And again, and I'm thankful for, I want to say, I am thankful for this. This is an unfiltered portion of an actual diversity, inclusion, etc. consulting session done in front of a business or an organization of some kind. Now, you can only attribute this to this speaker, obviously, but I would not be surprised if similar things are presented in similar ways in many instances where you have a diversity consultant coming into an organization and telling them the best way to think about the world. So, for all the maddening notions this is presenting, I am glad to be seeing it.
So, white people. In our society, white people have racial supremacy over people of color and people from indigenous communities.
Do you mean supremacy simply by population statistics, or are you associating population statistics with a belief system? I think you're doing the latter, but you're not saying explicitly you're doing the latter. You just defined the word previously as such and are now applying it. Oh boy.
When I say supremacy connected to sexual orientation, which group in our society has supremacy over others?
Demographic. Demographic. They are not a group.
Yeah. So it's people who are straight, cisgender, with...
Right. So male, white, straight are all supremacists. That's the lesson? Okay.
have privilege or would have supremacy over people from the LGBTQ communities. And in fact, as you'll see on this chart here,
in fact, you say, okay.
Supremacy makes its way, permeates multiple layers of identity.
What? Multiple? Wasn't this about the workplace? Okay. And again, the title of the show is the title of her video. So I'm not interpreting something. This is I just carried over the title of her video to the title in the top corner there. Identity. All right, identity politics, whoopty-skip.
And in fact, take a moment and pause and look at this chart, because it's actually a really powerful visual representation of how it is that supremacy permeates identity.
Okay, I don't know if I have no idea if they're going to cut to the chart. I can't even read the chart because it's white text on a baby blue background being projected in a room. So for those of you listening at home, if I could recite to you the chart, I would, but I can't. Maybe they'll cut to a slide. That would be useful.
And as you're looking at this chart, what I want you to be doing for a moment is not only taking it in from a macro level, what does this look like?
It looks like a poorly arranged chart for visual ability in a room projected, but and again, I can't see the chart. They haven't cut to a cue card, so we'll just have to listen until I see otherwise.
For Canadian society and systems and the workplace, but also be looking at it from the perspective of, where do you have supremacy?
Well, I mean, given how you've framed it, I suppose if I were in Canada, I would be the most supreme being of a kind, even though I don't think that way. But you're telling me that I think that way because supremacy imparts a ideology of arrogance and, well, supremacist thinking. So I don't know where I fit, unless you tell me I do just because I look and am born the way I am.
And recognize as well that supremacy is a really interesting beast.
What?
Because every single one of us in this room will belong to a group that has supremacy.
Demographic. Unless you're part of like the executive group in a company, then maybe you could say group then, but I don't know what we're talking about anymore. Are we talking about the workplace, or are we talking about your version of reality? I'm pretty sure it's the latter, but you know.
That in this moment, you sit here as someone who has supremacy, but you also sit here as someone who probably doesn't have supremacy. That
I am both powerful and weak. I am both big and small. I am both loving and hateful. Oh, the dichotomy of my existence. How do I manage?
We all both have it and don't have it, tied back to cultural identity. And in fact, one of the most powerful things that you can do after today is be in a place where you understand where you have that supremacy, where you hold it, and where you don't.
Oh my gosh. The most powerful thing I can do today. Wait. Do I want to do something that's powerful? Doesn't that express a kind of supremacy? And isn't supremacy an ideology of thinking I'm better than other people? And that's kind of, I mean, it is circumstantial as to whether or not that's necessarily justified, but I'm scared to think now.
The other thing I'll mention really quickly, because when I am teaching about this and in the workplace, what I have found is with leaders in particular, leaders have a lot more supremacy.
You don't say. You don't say. Oh, wait, they have supremacy, so they think that they're better than everybody else? Or structurally speaking, they have more responsibility than other people? Is that inherently a judgment on their attitude or their personality, or just on the hierarchy they belong to? because you seem to be munging those things together when it's not appropriate to do so. Thank you, Corey Suzuki. This sounds like the Force. He has it, you have it, and your kids will have it too. Yeah, this is organizational snake oil is what this is sounding like, but we're not even getting to the organization yet. Well, we just stepped into that territory with leadership. So let me back up a couple seconds because I did cut her off.
Leaders in particular, leaders have a lot more supremacy than others, especially because of intersections being the overlap of multiple identities that come together to impact your experience.
Intersectionality. Oh my God, we learned about that not too long ago, didn't we, everybody? Oh man, intersection. If I was actually doing a bingo card, we'd have something filled up, I think, by now. Marcus Gallagher asks, why is this 3 hours earlier than usual? Well, because it's Sunday. And for those of you, I mean, I only kind of officially announced this last week. Sunday is going to be my day for doing random stuff, just something that comes across my radar that I find interesting that is not a TEDx or TED Talk for a live stream. So that's why it's not named TED Excellence. It's not in that category. And I've just had this sitting around for a while, and I was curious to watch it, and I thought maybe you'd find it interesting too. So just thought I'd share it, and that's what Sunday will be. And Sundays will usually be an earlier stream so I can have the rest of the day off, because 6 nights a week doing Lords of the Night, while I enjoy it, it's nice to have a whole evening and a bulk of my day to just sort of relax. So if I'm going to do a live stream on a Sunday, it'll be relatively early. So keep an eye on my Twitter, and I'll announce those as they come. Thank you again, Lancelot652. I don't know where you would add it, but if you could, putting demographic on the bingo card, because how often you've had to correct people. I will think about it, but like I've said before, where the bingo card is now with the squares that we have, I think it's pretty well refined to a good overview of your average TEDx talk. If the Agents of Change video and the one we just did the other day, the racial colorblindness video, where for all intents and purposes, we almost filled up the whole card with a single TED Talk or TEDx talk, I think the card is rocking pretty good right now. I'm not sure I want to replace anything just yet, but that one and a couple others have been good suggestions. So if I decide to switch something out in the future, if a particular square isn't touched upon for a long time, or we keep dithering over it, I'll keep that one in mind. But it's not a bad idea. It's true. We come across group versus demographic many, many, many times. All right.
That there's a lot of guilt attached to supremacy. It's I didn't choose to be this way. I didn't choose to have this happen. I don't choose to be in a place where I have the higher up.
Wait. I didn't choose to be the terrible person you're telling me I am. Yeah, I guess you're right. I did not choose to be a supremacist simply on the basis of what I am. I didn't choose to be told I possess an ideology of supremacy just because statistically I fall into a demographic that outnumbers other demographics. You're correct. But guilt? Why should I feel guilty? I like you say, I didn't choose, and I also choose not to behave in the way that you are suggesting. But then we're not talking about individuality here, are we? We're not talking about individual assessment. We're talking about stereotypes, which is exactly what you are promoting, even though before you were talking about the inherent dangers of bias. So which is it? Are we supposed to be leaning on stereotypes because of statistical analysis? Or are we supposed to be ratcheting that back and looking at the specifics of individuals and individual action? And by the way, when are we going to get to the business side of this? Because right now, all I'm hearing is a social justice lecture on identity politics. That's it. Of course, that could be the lesson for business. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out. Thank you, Spuzzwick. Heard you on Kurt Metzger's podcast, and now I love your channel. Brilliant work. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hope you like the rest of my stuff. Be sure to check out my playlists. The live streams are a relatively recent thing, mostly because of the lockdown, and I have started to really enjoy them. But I have a giant library of other content that I've done before, scripted and otherwise, that I'm really proud of. So if you have an opportunity, check out my playlist, look back in the history of my channel. I think you'll find a lot of other stuff there you might like too. But thank you for coming over. Glad you liked the Kurt Metzger show. I'm hoping at some point to have Kurt on to do a tandem TEDx with me. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I got to figure that out. But yeah, anyway, thanks and welcome to the channel. All right.
Over others. And it feels really crappy for me. And I have a lot of guilt attached to it. And I can tell you based on my work, as in my actual D&I work, but my own personal self-work in reconciling guilt within me, because I have supremacy in some of these buckets now.
You have supremacy? How? I mean, you're in Canada and you're not male. You're not white. I don't know what your orientation is, so I don't know about that. But I mean, you're already oppressed, so which bucket do you have supremacy in? Which bucket do you believe yourself to be better than other people in? I can think of a couple, but that's only because I've watched a couple of her previous videos.
Now, as well, and did at birth, that the best disruption for guilt tied back to supremacy is action. It's action.
Okay. All right. So what action can I take to divest myself of my guilt over having been born in a way that I have no choice over and being assigned a moral compass that I don't necessarily possess simply based on things that I have no control over by you? How do I cure myself of my guilt? What propitiations can I make, and to whom do I make them to rid myself of this terribleness of what I am?
Action is the antidote to guilt tied to supremacy. It's that if you feel like crap because you feel like you have stuff and privileges and benefits, capital that you did not earn.
Privileges, benefits, capital that I did not earn. Let me look around my room for a second. Let's see. Did I work for the money to pay for that? Yeah, I did. Did I work for the money to pay? Yeah. Okay. My desk was a gift, a hand-me-down from my dad. Okay, I didn't earn that per se. That was a gift. Okay. My health insurance. Who pays for that? Well, I mean, my company pays for it, but I only have it because I pay. Yeah, what haven't I earned? What am I supposed to feel guilty over? And the only person attempting to make me feel guilty is, in this instance, you. You're telling me I should feel guilty. You're telling me because of what I am, I possess certain things, and because I possess these things that I did not earn, that I'm not worthy of, I should feel guilty. You are telling me this. Why are you telling me to feel bad? Are you seeking some kind of supremacy?
That were given to you just because of the color of your skin or your gender identity or your education, your class, or whatever. The antidote is using the capital, the benefits, the advantages that you have to disrupt the negative experiences of others.
Okay, and how do I do that? How do I use all of this unearned benefit from what I am, because I've always ever been handed things in my life? How do I leverage all of this power to benefit others? Do tell.
It's a very powerful experience.
It's a powerful... Do I really want to seek powerful experiences? Doesn't that just kind of, add on to that whole supremacy notion? Shouldn't I be seeking experiences that diminish me? So I can fit better into your world where I'm a more subservient person rather than a quote-unquote supremacist simply on the basis of what I am? Shouldn't I have diminishing experiences? If I give up my power to help somebody else out, aren't I diminishing myself in a way? Wait, are you sure powerful is the word you want to be using? I mean, words matter.
Now, so that's supremacy. It's the root ideology. It's the fundamental macro thing that's going on in society.
It's not an ideology. Supremacy is not an ideology in and of itself. Supremacism can be an ideology, but you'd have to qualify it with something. And even then, even if it is an ideology, depending on what you're qualifying it with, it's not necessarily bad. I mean, like supremacy in quality. Let's say a company, a business, has an ideology of supremacy in quality, as in the quality of their products. Okay, they have an ideology where they are seeking to be the best in the industry, better than everybody else in the quality of their product versus the competition. Is that bad? Is that an inherent evil? I mean, not that anybody would ever say quality supremacy, but if we're going to talk about words and their meanings for a second, let's just say it. Quality supremacy. Is that a bad ideology? It is an ideology. It's not just supremacy by itself. And it could be a productive one. If that is your goal, if that is your eternal goal to consistently and constantly seek quality as a company, as a product, is that bad? You start off this talk by saying that words matter, and then you use them incorrectly or without context in saying what you're saying. You use lazy definitions of things to fit your narrative and apparently your agenda. I'm not falling for it. I hope the people in the room aren't falling for it either, but then I assume they're paid to be there or required to be there. And maybe they'll have to conform to some rules in order to keep their jobs based on what you're saying today. And if that's the case, I have a lot of sympathy for them. But thank you, Johnny Stoffel. Disempowerment is a wide open business opportunity. It is, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, diminishing other people, making other people feel bad about themselves, telling them that they're inherently flawed, and then requiring them to do something on your behalf, ideologically or personally, in order to divest themselves of their inherent sin. We haven't seen this before, have we? Anywhere in any part of our history or various cultures? No, not at all.
From that, power and privilege flow. Now, power is defined, but power, privilege, highly interconnected, but power is macro, privilege is more micro.
I should really just give up on saying, please give us context, because I know we're not going to get it. I should just float along with her stream of consciousness here, because I'm not going to get any kind of help, am I?
Power is defined as the capital, both earned capital, actual capital, or social capital. So,
actual capital or social capital? Okay.
So capital, whether it's actual or socially created.
Actual or socially created. Well, if it's socially created, is it not then actual? I mean, doesn't it become actual if society creates it? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Words matter.
That we gain or that we enjoy because of supremacy.
Supremacy, which is the inherent ideology of being better than other people, or one group being better than another group. And I'm using her terminology because why bother fighting it? Okay, so if group A believes, because of supremacy, that they are better than group B, then they automatically assume and possess power because of their belief in themselves over group B, because simply believing that you're powerful makes you powerful, and that bestows power and then dissolves down to privileges because power is macro and privilege is micro. I guess. That is how I understand her construction of the world so far.
And when I'm talking about capital, I'm talking about access to education, access to healthcare,
In Canada, there's a public education system and a national healthcare system. So everybody in Canada has access to education and healthcare. Okay. I mean, obviously, there are plenty of arguments to be said about the quality of public education and the quality of national healthcare. But as far as access is concerned, the doors are open. Okay.
Access to employment.
Okay, well, now that's one that isn't necessarily granted automatically. It all depends on the individual and the circumstances. But and I don't know what the employment numbers in Canada are right now. I assume that they're comparable to America or thereabouts. So okay, so at least on 2 out of the 3 so far in Canada, access is a given. All right.
Access to justice.
Okay, we are descending into abstractions here. All right, so education, Canada, covered. Healthcare, Canada, covered. Employment, Canada. I mean, I don't know what the unemployment rate is in Canada. I'm assuming it's not necessarily in the pits, or at least let's say before this all pandemic happened, it wasn't terrible, but I don't know. But then justice. What was that? Wasn't there like a Simpsons episode where they were doing Pictionary or something? And somebody said, draw justice. And somebody drew something and they didn't show it to the camera, but they're like, oh my God.
So that's societally. But when we take a look at power in the workplace.
Yeah, okay, yes, okay. I've waited 7 minutes and 24 seconds into an 11-minute, 27-second video to finally get to what the title promised me. What does any of this have to do with the workplace?
How it shows up as is things like your ability to go and knock on the door of your leader's office and go in for a chat.
What? You're not going to talk about hierarchy? You're not going to talk about the actual structural hierarchy of a business and how power and privilege and supremacy isn't a moral assessment, but simply a mechanical assessment of delegation of authority and responsibility? You're not going to separate those two? Now it's, do I have the wherewithal to go knock on my boss's door? What?
It's your ability to knock on your leader's door, to go in for a social chat and ask your leader to for a favor, to connect you with someone in their network.
What? So put my glasses down on my keyboard for a second, rubbing my eyes. I know you guys enjoy it when I narrate my own actions, but given that I don't have a camera on, I don't really have another option. Power, supremacy, etc. in the workplace is someone going to knock on their boss's door to ask them to do them a favor to increase their network using the boss's connections. Okay. Thank you, Dark Lyle. Canadian unemployment rate is currently at 12.3%. Now, I assume that is pandemic numbers there. Thank you, Dark Lyle. Appreciate that. So, I mean, it's not great, but comparable to what's going on in the rest of the world today, or at least, America, which is the only sort of reference point I have. I'd be curious to know what it was before the pandemic. I'm assuming it was considerably smaller, hoping for the sake of my Canadian friends. But okay, knocking on my boss's door to get them to give me a contact to increase my network and opportunities. I mean, there is power dynamics going on there, obviously. You're having to acknowledge that the person's door you're knocking on possesses more power and supremacy than you do. So you're having to acknowledge the fact that you're lower on the totem pole to go seeking help, if that's what you want. Of course, why your boss owes you that kind of favor and under what circumstances you're doing it and so on are also relevant, but I guess in this instance it's not. So, okay, that's you. We went from intersecting identities, race, gender, orientation. Now we're dissolving it down to knocking on a door in the office. That's where this has led us. Okay, well, what if the person knocking is a straight white male and the person on the other side of the door is a non-white lesbian female? What is the power dynamic there? Who has supremacy? Does the person on the other side of the door just simply owe the person knocking on the door because they are supreme in the society? Is there got to be some extra effort that the person knocking on the door has to make in order to justify their favor as compared to the person sitting at the desk? How does that power dynamic work given the theory that you've already presented us about supremacy in Canadian society? I know she's probably not going to go there, but I am woefully curious. Thank you, Bacala Driving 8 Man, about 8.5% pre-pandemic, thanks to pipeline BS. Okay, so not exactly down in the dumps per se, but all right. But still, so 91.5% unemployment in Canada prior to the pandemic. You know, as far as averages go, it's better odds than Vegas. So access to employment in Canada sounds pretty good. So healthcare, education, employment, and then justice. And of course, how do you measure justice? I don't know, and I know she won't tell us, but moving on.
It's your ability to knock on your leader's door to ask for an introduction to someone in their network and say, while I'm here, can you help me look for other opportunities internally? Can you help me access more leadership roles? Can you help me access better work? Can you help me access higher comp?
Why should they? Why should they? What incentive is there for them to do all of these favors for you? Why do you deserve these favors? Have you been with the company for long? Have you shown any initiative other than simply demanding favors from your boss that would commend you to those kind of opportunities? Are there any merit-based elements that precede the knock on the door? Or is this just what you should do day one? I mean, don't get me wrong. There is a place for ambition, depending on how you go about it, and for taking initiative and so on, sure. But I think what our speaker is sorely lacking in her presentation is context and active examples. She's saying a lot of words, mostly in an incorrect fashion, and saying a lot of things that may or may not have some truth to them, depending, but the depending part depends on an example. So, yeah, my question would be why? Why does the leader, whoever the leader is, have to do these things for you?
That's power.
Yes, it is power. If the leader could suddenly snap their fingers and make all of these opportunities and contacts available to this, I don't know, subordinate of theirs, sure, that is power. You're right. It is power that comes from, presumably, the structure of the company and or power that comes from the leader's personal efforts, experience, and tenure in the company or in the industry. Is that earned power? Or is that just something they were given? I don't know. You're not telling us. And I'm still wondering, why should they?
Capital within an organization.
Yes, capital the leader possesses, presumably because of their position and prior efforts. Why do they owe the subordinate all of those favors simply on the basis of why?
Privilege is defined as the benefits that we gain, that we enjoy by virtue of supremacy?
Is it though? Is someone who qualifies for food stamps in a position of supremacy? I mean, I wouldn't qualify for food stamps. Fortunately, I'm in a position, not having any dependents or a mortgage or all the other fun things in life, where I don't qualify for food stamps. If I applied, I couldn't get them. But it is a benefit afforded people who are in a position where they need them. But if you qualify for the privilege of food stamps, does that make you a supremacist? Does it? In your calculus, I should think of people on food stamps as supremacists or supreme in some way because of food stamps? Is that it?
Our membership in groups that have supremacy. So privilege, by the way, I just got asked this. I was presenting to a law firm last week in the US.
You're presenting to a law firm in the US. Okay, privilege. And you're talking about racial hierarchies and all this other stuff. I wonder if they brought up, I don't know, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or the Equal Employment Opportunity amendments and things like that.
And I use the word privilege. And someone said to me, uncomfortable with the concept, I earned my privilege.
That is entirely possible. And I'm going for very sort of low-level things here, but, privilege is such an amorphous concept. If I work for years in my law firm to become a partner, and because I become a partner, I get keys to the executive washroom, well, that is a privilege I earned. Privilege can be an earned thing because you have earned your way into a position where you are part of a, let's say, relatively small and or exclusive demographic or group. This is one instance, at least so far, where being part of a group could extend to you privileges you do not enjoy if you're not part of that group, like the partners of a law firm. That is a group. So, tell me that privilege is never earned. Because I just thought of one example where it is, and it's not the only one. Tell me, oh, tell me true.
So, let's talk about earned and unearned.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about earned and unearned. Because it can be one or the other depending on the circumstances. And neither of them inherently possess a moral judgment. Or do they?
When we talk about privilege, we're really looking at it from an unearned perspective.
Why? Why are we? Why can't we take whatever example you're talking about one at a time and assess it? And again, even if it's unearned, is it inherently a comment on the person's value or morality?
Although some argue, well, I earned my privilege, and I understand where that comes from.
Okay, how about this? Just as one more example. I was born within the boundaries of the United States. Okay. So, as a consequence of that, I possess certain privileges as a citizen of the United States that someone who is not a citizen of the United States does not possess. Legally, I have several more rights and protections than someone who is not a citizen of the United States. Now, I didn't actively do anything to earn those privileges, right? I was just invested with those privileges as a result of my birth. So I possess them, but I did not earn them. But does my having those privileges thus mean I am a flawed person? Is my being a citizen of the United States an inherent, I don't know, stain upon my soul? Is it wrong? In so much that someone who's born in Germany has privileges in Germany that I would not possess if I just went there as a tourist. Unearned privilege is not an inherent evil. Earned privilege is not an inherent evil. You're going to have to give us specifics because you're talking in generalities, you're talking in stereotypes, you're talking in biases, which I thought was like what we're supposed to be avoiding, but I guess not.
Example, I have worked, we grew up in a household where my parents were immigrants, and when they first came to the country, they were working class and eventually became middle class.
Okay, so they worked their way up in the economic structure of society. Well, good for them.
And so I was born into a working class, lower middle class family.
Uh-huh.
But I stand here now before you as someone who has class supremacy.
Right. So you conceivably worked and earned your way into a higher tax bracket. We'll just shorthand it that way. All right. So compared to where your parents were when they first came to the country, you currently reside in a place that possesses more power and more privilege than where your parents were when they arrived in the country. Okay, so should you feel bad about that? Should you, I don't know, give away all of your money to cleanse yourself of your inherent guilt for your supremacy? And if you say that you're class supremacy, does that mean you believe you're better than other people? Because that's what you told us supremacy means.
So one could argue like, oh, Ritu earned her privilege. She like earned her class privilege. And
well, unless you're going to tell us otherwise, I would agree. And if you have earned your privilege, if it wasn't just handed to you or you're just talking like a hypocrite here, congratulations to you. You earned your way into a decent place in, well, I guess society in general and economy personally. So you earned it. And I would say you have nothing to apologize for or feel guilty about. Are you going to tell us otherwise?
I worked really hard for it. Let me tell you, I worked really effing hard for this outfit. So I worked really hard for it.
And you know what? For the sake of argument, I stipulate you worked very hard. You've made your own business. You're the leader of your own company effectively. You go around all over the place, obviously internationally, talking to businesses, getting up in front of people, giving speeches and lectures and things. I have no doubt that you work very hard. I have no doubt that what you have earned. And more power to you. But let's just take away for a second the immutable parts of your makeup and switch them out with the supremacist aspect you talked about earlier. If a white man coming from the exact same conditions as you did the exact same amount of work to reach the exact same position in life that you enjoy, would you say that that person earned their way into their position? Or would you assess them differently because of what they are? I would be very curious to know the answer to that question.
Really did. However, my earned privilege is on the backbone of unearned privilege.
Okay. And again, unearned privilege is an inherent evil?
Because my parents still were middle class and still could afford to pay for my education.
Wait. Okay, and maybe she'll clarify here in a second. So, because your parents worked hard to go from working class to middle class and then decided as good parents to pay for your education, that is an unearned privilege. Tell me, where did the money come from to pay for your education? Did that just manifest out of thin air? Or did your parents work to earn the money to pass on the benefits of their labor to the betterment of their children? It doesn't sound unearned to me. It sounds like your parents worked on your behalf. Now, you could say, well, I didn't do anything to earn it. Sure, I guess. Does that make your parents' gesture I don't know, tainted?
Whereas there are others who did not have that privilege.
You're right. Life isn't fair. And
so a lot of our earned privilege is on the backbone of unearned privilege.
I'm about to get old man here for a second. I've done this a couple of times before, but this always comes up in my mind when I hear stuff like this. My grandparents, both sets of grandparents, they lived through the Depression. Both of my grandfathers were in the military, World War II. My grandmother and, a couple of my other relatives lived through and survived the Dust Bowl. They worked their entire lives. My grandfather on my mom's side eventually, he was in the Air Force, and he eventually moved those experiences from World War II onto NASA. He actually ended up working on Apollo 11. My other grandfather was a far more, let's say, salt of the earth type individual. He owned a bar. He owned several businesses, a gas station, that kind of thing. They worked their entire lives. Okay. And then my parents, my father was in the Air Force, and then he was a police officer. My mother worked a whole bunch of different things before I was born. And my parents worked their entire lives. They tried to have children right after they got married, but they thought they couldn't because they had 3 miscarriages in a row. But they continued to stay together throughout all of those tragedies, things that would test any relationship. And they were married a good 10 years before I came along. They hadn't expected me. And they worked and worked and worked. And then my sister was born. And then we had a relatively nice middle-class life. And then the roof fell in because of various business circumstances and economy and such. My family came precariously close to going out and having to, I don't know, live on the street or something at one point. It was pretty bad. But my parents, being as amazing as they are, they scrimped, they saved, they scratched, and they worked their way back to the middle through honest and hard labor. And out of that, they were able to provide a little bit of support to my sister and I over the course of our lives for college and things like that. But my sister and I never knew want. We never went hungry. You know, we got very close in places, but they worked and they worked and they worked. And so when it came time for me to go to college, and when it came time for me to actually go out in the world by myself, you know what I had behind me? I had the privilege of not wanting to have all of that legacy of effort that led to my benefit to go to waste and just think of it as a frivolity and just, ignore it. So on the basis of their example, I have done everything I can to live up to their sacrifices effectively on my behalf. Did I earn the money that put me through college? No. Was it an unearned privilege? Hell no. It was the end result of at least 2 generations worth of hardworking, honest people. And I am doing the best that I can to carry that forward in my small way. So if I have a debt to pay, it is to live up to the sacrifices made by those before me. That is my quote-unquote burden. But they earned it. They worked for it. Anything I have is based on the example they put in front of me, not because it was handed to me, but because it's expected of me and expected of myself. So when I hear something like this, oh, it's on the back of unearned privilege, you are doing your parents a disservice, I think. That is my opinion. That is my opinion. When she says that, she's doing her parents, who immigrated to a foreign country, who worked their way from working class up to middle class, that use the benefits of their own labor to put their daughter through school as an unearned privilege. I think you are doing your parents a severe disservice. That concludes this piece of my commentary.
Our focus, though, is on the benefits that we gain from membership in these groups that have supremacy.
Membership. Oh, are there cards now? Do I sign a form? Do I have a certificate I get to put on my wall that says, congratulations, you're part of the male group? You're part of the white group? Boy, I didn't know Canada was so documentarian.
In society, we hear of privilege, and it looks like things like if you don't have to worry about what you wear to an airport or what you wear on a plane,
what?
That would be privilege.
I don't know what you don't have to worry about what you wear on a plane. Are we talking about like those times where someone tries to get on the plane because they're wearing booty shorts and a low-cut dress or something, and they're trying to get attention, trying to get kicked out because of the rules of the airliner or something, and then they post an Instagram photo going, oh, it's such an injustice, I'd be kicked off the plane just for showing off my body, like, or something like that? Is it one of those things? I've seen several of those things that weren't totally setups, but yeah.
If you don't worry about being stopped by the police, that's privilege.
If I don't worry about being stopped by the police, that's a privilege. So in order to not be privileged, I need to be paranoid about the police everywhere I go. So if I assume a mindset of inherent phobia over police officers, I've divested myself of privilege. Is that it?
If you don't worry about going into a Starbucks and sitting at a table waiting for a friend to join you for a coffee and worrying that you'll be arrested for waiting, that's privilege.
Okay, that's talking about the Starbucks incident of, God, how long ago was that now? Was that 2017, 2018? I think. It's hard to remember now. Okay, yeah. That one incident that happened in that one Starbucks is exemplative of the entire society, of the world. Okay?
That's in society. But let's talk about what privilege looks like in the workplace.
Yeah, you know what? Because I think you've used the word workplace like 3 times now in the last 10 minutes, when the entire section of this presentation is supposed to be about power, privilege, and supremacy in the workplace. Okay, yes, let's please talk about it since we only have less than a minute left in this.
Privilege looks like, tied back to supremacy, if you don't worry about what you wear in the morning, or if you don't worry about how to do your hair, should I straighten it? Should I cut it? Should I wear it natural? If you don't worry about altering your voice, altering your accent, altering what you share as it relates to your personal life, altering the words you use to speak.
Okay. If I don't worry about, so if I show up to work wearing nothing but a burlap sack with holes cut in it, with my hair all a mess and unshaven, and I smell like a sewer, and I start talking like this to everybody because I have the privilege not to care about my voice, then I guess I'm super privileged, and I'm totally going to keep my job at that point, right?
Altering what details you volunteer to people about your religious identity, your cultural identity, your sexual orientation, your...
What possible relevance does any of that have to do in the workplace? Whose business is it in the workplace who I sleep with, unless I'm a porn actor? What does my religious beliefs have anything to do with the workplace unless I work in a church or a temple? This hedges on the whole death of professional distance that I've talked about so many times. Bring your whole self to work. Bring your authentic self to work. And obviously, our speaker here is an author of a book on authenticity. So she's really big into people bringing their authentic selves to work, as in there's no filter. There is no line between my real life, my personal life, and my working life. But I still have to ask, why does it matter? What relevance is it to anyone else in the workplace who I like to have sex with? Is that a discussion that you think is appropriate to have between coworkers? Is it any more or less appropriate to talk about that kind of stuff than the KKK?
Gender identity and so much more, that's privilege. That's privilege.
Oh, and that was the end of the show. Okay. Not talking about who I sleep with is a privilege, or talking about who I sleep with is a privilege, or I don't know. I'm confused now. Not having to talk about, like, who is interrogating me on my religion in the workplace? Who is interrogating me on who I have sex with in the workplace? And whoever that is, they're going to get fired. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if it's so much of a privilege to not have to be asked about those things, so much as it's against most company policy to have to interrogate somebody about their personal life, unless it somehow, in some way, affects your working life in an adverse way. But then, like I've said, so many companies are really, really working hard, and have been working hard for a long time, to destroy the barrier between personal life and working life, so that your working life becomes intermingled with your personal life, and therefore you're never off the clock. You're always representing the company. Whether you're out and about by yourself or you're at the office, you're always a part of the company. They tout it as something beneficial, like, oh, you can come to the office and not feel like you're marginalized or alone, or we don't understand the struggles that occur in your life because of what you are, because obviously because of what you are, you have struggles, you know. I mean, we're not making assumptions or anything or being stereotypical or discriminatory in that way. No, we're being understanding and benevolent. Sure. Yeah, so we have these employee resource groups. So if you happen to fall into one of these demographic, I mean groups, then you have your own group inside the company just for people like you to help support you through your obvious struggles that you have based on what you are. And I'm setting aside those veterans employee resource groups because that's the one employee resource group I've often heard mentioned that actually constitutes something done of merit and not simply some aspect of what you are. Anyway, I'm going off here, but I'm kind of consolidating a whole bunch of nonsense I've heard over the years into one little thing. Anyway, did we learn anything? Well, I learned a lot about our speaker. I learned a lot about our speaker and how she sees the world, and especially how she presents the reality of things to other people in businesses and in organizations. Trying to, like I say, intermingle identity politics with workplace hierarchy, but doing a very, very bad job of it because there was no workplace hierarchy except for knocking on the door and asking your boss for them to do you a bunch of favors. Unearned favors, I might add, because she never talked about, hey, you have to reach this level of whatever in your company before you should feel that you have the place to go ask. Just go in and demand it. And then, of course, vilify unearned privilege embodied in the money her parents earned to pay for her college. You know, I would think, and maybe I'm wrong, I would think that her parents' ability to pay for their child's college was an earned privilege. I would see that as a privilege to be able to send my child to school without assistance, or without much assistance, let's say. To have worked hard enough, to have been wise enough with my money, to be able to afford for the best of my children, or afford the best for my children, sorry. I would think that would be an earned privilege. Wouldn't you? I think so. Anyway, chat, I'm going to give the next few minutes to you guys. If you have anything you want to add or say or grouse about, I would understand. And then we'll wrap this up. Let's see. That one, Servant of Satania. I think if you look at this without a bias, it's pretty useful since she indirectly tells you that women and minorities are both supreme and privileged. I guess that's true. I mean, she showed that she represents the counterpoint to her own claims. But I bet that she would say that she's a singular example and that society says otherwise, and she worked really hard and on and on. Right. Let's see. Check your logic. That's not a good way to end a talk. Well, again, this is a section of a larger presentation. She had 2 or 3 videos from this same presentation on her channel. And I mean, I guess I could have linked them all together, but they were all titled with different subjects. And this is the one that jumped out at me. I mean, maybe next Sunday I'll do one from another part of the talk if it's long enough. I think this was the longest segment of them all. So yeah, this was not the entirety of her presentation. Let me just reiterate that. This is some segment within a presentation she gave. So that was where she decided to end that segment. So in that sense, I guess you could say that's a lousy place to end the segment because it really still didn't explain a whole lot, but the presentation itself is much longer. Let's see. That one served as Tanya Scribely. We learned more about your personal life. I've told that story before. I've told my thoughts on earned and unearned privilege and things like that, and white privilege and all that stuff. Because maybe I lean on it too much as an example, but it's the only direct one I have. My family and all the things that they did in their lives and their histories, and just the amazing stuff my grandfathers did. When you think back in the aggregate of just the kind of things they had to go through and then overcome and then sacrifice of themselves and do. Yeah. And even, my father and my mother, it's just, I don't know that I'll ever have a story at least in my perspective, as admirable as my parents and my grandparents. But I hope maybe someday, but that's for somebody else to judge. Marcus Gallagher, scribe is an alchemist confirmed. I am. Can I turn water into Dr. Pepper? Because if I can't, I haven't gotten there yet. Let's see. Rick Ashbringer, especially if her parents felt she was deserving of the education they worked hard to pay for. Well, yeah. I mean, if they want the best for their daughter, and I assume that they did, they worked their entire lives after immigrating to Canada to give their children a better life. And I'm assuming they came to Canada specifically for a better life from wherever they were coming from. And why else would you do that? So not only through their labor, but all the hoops I have to assume they jumped through to become residents and I'm going to assume citizens of Canada. On top of all that, they worked their way from working class to middle class, which isn't an easy feat. So why is that an unearned privilege to be able to send your children to college? I don't know. Renovatio, Scribelight, the fact that this one pushes dogmatic conformity, collectivism, and judges people based on gender, race, and sexuality, having written a book called The Authenticity Principle, Resist Conformity, shake my head. Oh, is that what the total title of that book is? The Authenticity Principle, Resist Conformity? Wow. That is a bit of a contradiction, huh? Interesting. Let's see. Marcus Gallagher, Sundays are not scribes' best days. Oh. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'll try to do better next time. I apologize. I'm okay, though. I thought you'd find it interesting. Chat more. It really is disgraceful. She's pretending all of her parents' sacrifice to provide for her never happened. Well, it never happened, or somehow an inherent sin or something. That because she benefited from their labor, what they did, not that she is somehow bad, but because that is somehow tainted because she didn't work for it. So the better thing would have been for her parents to just leave her to her own devices. That would have caused her to be a more pure individual if her parents just had, let her fend for herself. It's like she turns 18, they're like, okay, out the door. You're not going to have any unearned privileges. You're going to earn everything you're ever going to get out. And just cut the ties right there. Or hell, why even wait till 18? 16, emancipate the kid from the parents legally and just kick him out the door or whatever. I mean, I'm not quite sure what she was arguing there. Let's see. James Von Maxwell. Isn't it just so odd that when people immigrate to a better country, gosh, it seems it's almost always a majority white capitalist country. Shocking that there's not mass immigration to Haiti. I don't know about the white majority part, but a better economy. It really is about better opportunities for advancement. You know, I mean, people run to rich countries all the time, regardless of what the skin color is. If you're going to have a better opportunity somewhere else, you go there. So I don't think it has anything to do with skin color. Let's see, Pete. All I took from this is that she thinks that hierarchy is an ideology, and her parents are probably incredibly disappointed. Possibly so. She never got to just the inherent moral judgment aspect of company hierarchies, just assuming that supremacy in the workplace is inherently bad and that bosses owe their subordinates something just for knocking on the door. I guess. I don't know. But anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today for this. I didn't know where it was going to go. I can't then say I'm disappointed as to where we ended up, but there you go. This is at least one example of what an actual diversity, equity, inclusion presentation looks like in front of an organization. If I come across anything else similar in the future, I may bring it up. But next Sunday, if I do a stream on Sunday, next Sunday, I'll probably do something completely different. Otherwise, guys, if you would like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tomorrow night, Monday night, on Satsu 2 Cents' channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories that you submit to us, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. And tomorrow, I may be doing a TED Excellence. I have a couple lined up. We'll see. Keep an eye on my Twitter for notifications on that. You can find that link in the description. And yeah, follow me there. And if I am or am not going to do something, I will let you know. But otherwise, guys, I hope you all have a great West. Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting rabbit. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And certainly if you're not safe, get somewhere safe. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye, guys. Take care.